This is what Ukraine looks like tonight. A nation plunged into darkness. Just hours ago, on November 8th, Russia launched one of its biggest aerial attacks since the war started. But this just wasn't aimed at the military. The real target was the country's very heart, its energy grid. It's a calculated move to shut down Ukraine's power and maybe its will to fight, right as winter begins to bite. Scale of the barrage. The sheer scale of this attack is staggering. It was a massive and brutally coordinated. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, Russia threw almost everything it had, launching over 450 drones and 45 missiles in a single night. And we aren't talking about a random volley. This was a deadly mix of weapons from hypersonic Kizal and Kalibri cruise missiles to waves of those infamous Iranian made Shahed drones that swarmed their targets. Air raid sirens wailed for hours from Kiev in the north all the way down to Odessa in the south. Ukraine's air defenses did manage to shoot down most of the incoming drones, but the sheer volume was just too much to handle. Hits were confirmed in at least 9 regions, including Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Poltava. Fires raged at critical infrastructure facilities in Kiev, and the southern part of Odessa saw its energy facilities struck. The assault was relentless, hitting both the power grid and the people who depend on it. So, what is the human cost? Well, the result from last night was immediate and it was devastating. In the central Poltava region, the city of Kremenchuk into a total blackout with no electricity, water, or heating. Similar emergency power outages were forced across Kharkiv, Sumy, and the capital region, disrupting everything from water supplies to public transport. In Kiev, operations on the metro were disrupted as its stations once again became massive bomb shelters for terrified residents. But this attack wasn't just about kilowatts, it was deadly. Across the country, Russian strikes have killed at least 11 civilians and injured dozens more in the last 24 hours. In the city of Dnipro, a Russian drone slammed into a 9-story apartment building while people were asleep inside. It tore through several floors, killing 3 people and injuring 12 others, including children. As we speak, rescue crews are still digging through the rubble, a grim task that has become a terrifying routine. The calculated winter strategy. Let's be clear, this was not a random act of aggression. Military analysts and Ukrainian officials all agree. This is a calculated Russian strategy. The goal: cripple the country's infrastructure, terrorize the population, and create a humanitarian crisis just as the first winter sets in. For months, experts have warned that attacks like this could lead to a technological disaster if key power plants are knocked offline for too long. In a defiant address, President Zelenskyy condemned the assaults as energy terrorism, vowing that Ukraine would not be broken. He called for a swift international response, demanding tougher sanctions against Russia's entire energy sector to cut off the resources funding this war. Meanwhile, the emergency crews are already out there working around the clock in incredibly dangerous conditions to get the power, light, and heat back on for their fellow citizens. The war on two fronts, and this air war isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a much bigger, intensified Russian push on the Eastern Front. While missiles were hitting cities, Russian ground troops continue their grinding advance in the Donetsk region as the gateway to the rest of the Ukrainian held territory in the area. Recent reports say Russian troops are tightening their grip, with street fighting happening across the city as they extend their logistics into the southern districts. The situation has been described as critical. Ukrainian forces are trying to hold the line against a determined offensive. And the pressure on Pokrovsk is immense. It really shows Russia's two-pronged strategy, trying to break Ukraine's army on the battlefield and its people's spirit back home. This November 8th attack is a brutal escalation as Ukraine heads into its fourth winter of this full-scale war. Russia seems to be betting that by plunging the country into cold and darkness, it can finally break the Ukrainian spirit. So, the next few weeks are going to be a true test of endurance. It leaves us with some urgent questions. Can Ukraine's steady air defenses hold up against a sustained campaign like this? And will its allies in the West step up with the advanced systems needed to protect the skies, keep the lights on, and help this country continue its fight for the right to exist? The answers to those questions could very well decide the future of this war and the fate of the entire nation. The gists. So the big thing I want you to keep in mind is this city right here. So this is the logisticals hub. This railway right here is extremely important because it leads all the way up to Dnipro, okay, and then up here to the north. And essentially what's happening is you get to where I'm highlighting right here, and then you have here, and then you have up here. And essentially what's happening is the Russians are advancing this way, and then coming up north. And then they've got some of the railway area here. And essentially they're trying to encircle and get to where this yellow line goes north and south and where this goes east and west. What they're trying to do is almost parallel between here and here, be able to almost like a straight line, cut that off. If they're able to do that, then they'll almost assuredly be able to encircle this area. Pictures right here showing some of last night's attack in the Poltava region. Captured some farms north of Mernhad and advanced inside the southern part of the city itself. The city of Donetsk is now under complete Russian control, and as of today, very heavy fighting has been reported in the town. Conflict news roundup. There is a typhoon that has devastated Vietnam. The storm killed at least 2 in central Vietnam after flooding the Philippines, with vehicles swept away in streets. Pope Leo meets Palestinian leader on Gaza. Discussions focused on aid delivery and reviving the two-state solution amid ongoing conflict. Tunisian opposition joins hunger strike. Figures are protesting in support of a jailed politician. Political tensions. North Korea threatens action over U.S. visit. Pyongyang warns of offensive action as a U.S. aircraft carrier arrives in South Korea. In Gaza news, Israeli strikes and demolitions continue amid ceasefire. The Israeli army conducted air raids and demolished residential buildings in southern Gaza. Despite the ongoing ceasefire with Hamas, U.S. forces aid Gaza delivery efforts. American troops are now collaborating with Israel to oversee aid transfers into the Gaza Strip as part of the Trump administration ceasefire initiative. Hostage remains update. The remains of 5 Israeli hostages are still held in Gaza, with details emerging on their identities and the ongoing recovery efforts. Separately, the Red Cross and Hamas members are searching for the body of a hostage in an Israeli-held area, Rafah, while Israel returned the bodies of 15 Palestinians after militants handed over an Israeli hostage's remains. In Sudan news, Army downs RFS drone. Sudanese military air defenses intercepted a drone launched by the Rapid Support Forces. In North Kordofan, averting potential attacks on civilian and military targets. International diplomacy ramps up. Egypt and Russia rejected the creation of parallel entities in Sudan during talks between their foreign ministers, emphasizing unified governance. The African Union held discussions to address escalating hostilities, involving its special envoy on the genocide prevention and commissioner for peace and security. And if you enjoyed this content, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so we can deliver it to you timely and daily when we do our uploads. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay informed.